Welcome to The Authority File. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice. My guest, David Danelo, is the director of field research for the Foreign Policy Research Institute and an adjunct professor at the University of Texas at El Paso's National Security Studies Institute. He's a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy and served 7 years as an infantry officer in the Marine Corps. He's also an author, and his latest book is called The Field Researcher's Handbook, a guide to the art and science of professional fieldwork, published by Georgetown University Press. When he wrote the book, David Danelo relied on his experience in the military as well as his subsequent work with the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol to inform his approach to fieldwork. The result is a very approachable book that, at its heart, advocates for getting outside to conduct research. That may sound obvious, but it's easier than ever, after all, to conduct some kinds of research without ever leaving the office. David outlines the protocol for conducting field research, but he also delves into the art and science of it too, which results in a title that explains the practice of field research for a broad range of readers. In this final episode of our 4-part series, David and I discuss some of the key takeaways from his book about how to actually write and effectively present a field research report, and how David has ended up making a very personal connection to fieldwork. Put a lot of thought towards and guidance in your book, sort of about I guess, sort of the craft of writing, so to speak. I mean, obviously you talk a little bit about sort of how a journalistic background might contribute to one's ability as a field researcher. In fact, you were sort of talking a little bit about that's how you thought you needed to break into field research, was from a journalism angle. But at towards the end, when you're providing some guidance on actually writing the report, you talk about different story elements, such as, within nonfiction genres, for example, as well as even presentation advice if you're presenting the report, which I thought was really helpful. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about some of the major takeaways, to keep in mind there when considering the story elements, as well as presentation tactics.
I think one of the things that I've benefited from is studying the idea that everything that we're working with in mediums of information has some element of story in how we're relating information. I mean, we're trying to do this right now. We're trying to tell the story of the Field Researcher's Handbook to the audience that's listening to this. We want to give them the story of this book so that they can gain a sense of it, so that they, perhaps not just benefit from hearing our podcast, but would benefit from actually getting the book. And it's more than just sales, because story is often truncated into, well, you tell the story of this and then we're just trying to sell stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, no, story is about relating change. And so when we're talking about the experience of field research, we're talking about the experience of change. We're talking about the experience of how going into the field changes our perspectives on something that we didn't know before. Right. So when we're relating that information to a group of people who haven't had the experience that we've had, we're telling a story about it. Mm-hmm. We're telling the story in whether we're doing it with a PowerPoint presentation or a lecture or a work that we're writing. We are telling the story of what it is that we've experienced, and then we may have different results that we want to achieve through the stories that we're telling, whether that's policy influence or whether that's just a well-received presentation or a dissertation that makes it through committee and is passed, so the PhD is awarded. Whatever it is that we're trying to achieve, we want people to pay attention to what we're saying. We don't want them, in the same way as I've, kind of thrown some anecdotes here and, kind of let the audience in on some of the things that have happened in my life as a researcher, and that I've had to think through professionally. That's what we're doing. I mean, we're telling a story to whomever it is that's engaging with our material. And so, I I enjoyed preparing that section of the book, actually most for myself. That was one of the parts that I really go back to in my own mind is how am I looking to tell this story? Even now, when I'm doing policy work in the global initiative, or whatever it is that I'm involved in this presentation or otherwise, in answering these questions, how do I want to tell this story? How do I want to be able to just share with whomever's listening how valuable the practice of field research has been, and why it became a professional passion for me, and something that I just enjoy doing. And why do people benefit from it? I mean, what is of value in this this book that we put together, and telling that story, in this case the story of the book, in any case for field research the story of the research. That's where it all comes together. So yeah. So
Excellent. So throughout the book, you make a very personal connection to field research as an occupation. You conduct field research not just for your day job, so to speak, but also because you have a passion for travel, discovery, and for learning about new cultures, internalizing the quote-unquote other, as you say. I'm wondering if you could read the first two full paragraphs on page 112 and explain a little bit more about what you wrote there.
Sure, I'd be happy to. First, the reading. My life as a field researcher has involved learning how to observe, note, and narrate. It has required an ability to understand danger and transcend risk by paying attention and choosing as well as I could. It has demanded moving beyond fear that restricts while retaining awareness of caution that guides. But most of all, field research has permanently made the other a part of me. Each new place has humbled me as I witnessed the breadth and depth of human experience. Each new culture has taught me how similar and diverse we all really are. Each new presentation has shown me the power of logic, belief, and emotion when shared in a story.
So I think that encapsulates quite a bit of the rest of the book and a lot of what we've just talked about. So I'm wondering if you could, just explain a little bit more of your thought process there.
I feel really grateful for the chance to go talk to people about themselves and hear their stories. And every opportunity that I've had to collect qualitative data, which is what the practice of field research is formally called, it's really just a chance to listen to people talk about things that matter to them, either professionally or personally, experiences that they've had, and a chance to connect in a new way with our common humanity. And I think that's a beautiful way to get paid. It's something that's a really rare chance to make a living doing. And it's something that I feel privileged to do as a profession, especially in light of my former profession in the military, which was obviously very focused on delivering solutions that were more martial and violent and definitive, or at least having those as the tools in my toolkit that I had to be able to exercise. And I get to pursue something that really is just about listening and asking questions and learning, and then attempting to capture that as best I can and tell the story as best I can. And that's a real privilege. That's a chance to engage in a line of work that not everybody gets a chance to do. And so I feel pretty lucky to be able to do that.
Yeah, indeed. And it sounds also like it's really had sort of an impact on sort of how you are evolving as a person. It's changing you, or has changed you in good ways.
I think so. Yeah. I at least I would definitely agree that it's changed me, and I hope it continues to in positive ways.
Excellent. All right. Well, David, that's all we have time for. I really appreciate your time to be on the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
You just heard from David Danelo, author of a new book published by Georgetown University Press called The Field Researcher's Handbook, a guide to the art and science of professional fieldwork. David is the director of field research for the Foreign Policy Research Institute and an adjunct professor at the University of Texas at El Paso's National Security Studies Institute. If you like what you hear, rate us or give us a review on your podcast platform of choice. And if there's a topic you'd like us to cover, drop me a line. I'm at bmickey@ala-choice.org. As always, sponsorship and advertising for the Authority File podcast are handled by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino. And all of our episodes are produced by Choice's digital media specialist, Mark Dirks, and digital media assistant, Sabrina Kofer. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.